The last line of defense. Commander Vaxthal of the Galactic Defense Alliance stared at the holographic display with all four of his eyes, mandibles clicking in distress. Another defensive line had fallen to the swarm. The crystalline beings of the Centauri cluster gone. The silicon-based civilizations of the Orion Spur devoured. 3,000 years of galactic civilization crumbling in mere decades. High Commander, his sensor officer's voice wavered. The swarm has breached the Arcturus Gate. Their bioships are. They're adapting faster than ever. The command center of Station Aegis hummed with desperate activity as officers from 24 species coordinated what might be their final stand. The swarm had seemed unstoppable since they first emerged from the galactic core, their living ships consuming everything in their path and evolving to counter every weapon, every strategy. Dr. Sarah Chen wasn't supposed to be here. As a xenorchaeologist, she should have been cataloging artifacts on some forgotten world, not standing before the Alliance's high command. But what she'd found changed everything. You want us to believe. High Commander Vaxthal's translator crystal conveyed his skepticism that a restricted system holds the key to defeating the swarm. Based on ruins, Sarah projected her findings onto the command center's main display. Not ruins, Commander. An intact military installation. Human military. The chamber erupted in overlapping translator crystals as dozens of species tried to speak at once. Humanity was little more than a legend now, sealed away in their home system centuries ago by treaty. Some said they were too violent, others too unpredictable. The official records were mysteriously incomplete. The installation's quantum dating puts it at just before the sealing. Sarah continued. And it's still active. The automated defenses nearly vaporized my research vessel. Admiral Kuan, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with interest, leaned forward. Humans were primitive. Their technology was centuries behind even our most basic systems. Sarah smiled. Were they? Or is that just what everyone was meant to believe? She gestured, and new images filled the display. These are weapon systems we've never seen before. Defense grids that operate on principles our scientists can't explain. And this, she highlighted a massive underground chamber, appears to be a quantum communications array capable of reaching across the galaxy. To where? Vaxthal demanded. I believe. Sarah took a deep breath. To the rest of their fleet. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone knew the stories of human warships, how they'd fought with desperate creativity during the brief war before the sealing, how they'd sometimes achieved the impossible through sheer determination. A proximity alarm shattered the moment. Swarm vessels. The sensor officer's crystalline form vibrated with panic. They found us. Multiple hive ships approaching. Vaxthal's compound eyes fixed on Sarah. How quickly can you access this installation? With a proper engineering team. Hours. But the swarm will be occupied. Admiral Kavan's bioluminescence shifted to war patterns. The Fourth Fleet will buy you that time. What followed was a blur of activity. Sarah found herself on a stealth transport with a hand-picked team of the Alliance's best engineers. Behind them, the combined firepower of the Fourth Fleet engaged the swarm in what everyone knew was a suicide mission. The forbidden world hung before them, a blue-white jewel that had been mechanically shifted to an artificial orbit centuries ago. As they descended through the atmosphere, Sarah's sensors detected the ancient defense grid powering up. Broadcasting the authentication codes, she announced, praying the ones she decoded were correct. A tense moment passed. The response came not in data, but in a human voice that made everyone on the bridge freeze. Welcome back, children of Earth. You've been gone a very long time. The massive doors of the underground facility began to open, revealing technology that would rewrite everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. But more importantly, they revealed the truth about why humanity had really been sealed away. The swarm hadn't been the first of its kind, and humanity hadn't been sealed away as punishment. They'd been sealed away as the galaxy's last line of defense. As Sarah led her team into the facility, The ancient AI's words echoed in her mind. Contingency protocols initiated. Accessing fleet command archives. Beginning operation. Lazarus. The war was about to change. Humanity was about to return. And the swarm was about to learn why some species were sealed away not because they were too weak, but because they were too powerful to be allowed to remain. Awakening the sleeping giants. Deep within the ancient human facility, Sarah Chen watched in amazement as systems dormant for centuries hummed to life. The engineering team, a collection of the Alliance's finest minds, worked to understand technology that defied their expectations at every turn. Impossible, muttered Chief Engineer Relic, his crystalline form reflecting the pulsing lights of the machinery. These power systems, they're not using quantum containment or zero-point energy. They're using controlled micro-singularities. Sarah studied the holographic displays that filled the vast chamber. Unlike the smooth, organic interfaces of Alliance technology, human systems were sharp, aggressive, almost predatory in their design. They weren't primitive, she whispered. They were just thinking differently. The facility's AI, which called itself Atlas, projected itself as a grid of flowing blue light. Human engineering doctrine prioritized redundancy and repairability over efficiency. It explained, when you can't predict every variable, you design for the unexpected. A harsh alarm cut through their work. On the surface, the defense grid was engaging swarm scout ships. The Fourth Fleet's sacrifice had bought them time, but not much. The quantum array, Sarah insisted, turning to Atlas. You said it could reach the fleet. Where are they? The AI's form shifted, expanding to fill the chamber with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. When the sealing protocol was enacted, humanity did not merely accept imprisonment. They prepared. The fleet was dispersed to hidden anchorages across the galaxy, preserved in temporal stasis, waiting. Red points of light appeared across the map, dozens of them, each representing ships, crews, weapons that had been sleeping for centuries while the galaxy forgot them. Why? Demanded Admiral Quen, who had joined their team. Why seal away an entire species as a contingency? Atlas's form coalesced into a more focused shape, because humanity was not merely dangerous in terms of technology. Their true power lay in how they thought, in chaos, in improvisation, in their ability to do the unexpected. The AI projected a new image, historical footage of human ships in combat. They didn't move in the precise, calculated patterns of Alliance fleets. They were erratic, aggressive, using maneuvers that seemed suicidal, until they suddenly worked. The swarm operates on perfect logic, evolving through predictable patterns. Atlas continued. Humanity's greatest weapon was always their unpredictability, their ability to conceive solutions that no rational species would consider. Sarah's hands flew across the interface, correlating data. The nearest anchorage, it's in the Hercules void. A fleet of. She paused, checking the numbers again. 30 ships, including something designated as Project Prometheus. Alert. Atlas announced suddenly. Multiple swarm capital ships entering the system. Estimated time to orbital insertion, 47 minutes. Admiral Qven's bioluminescence flickered with decision patterns. Can we reach this anchorage before they break through? The facility maintains a functional fold space drive, Atlas replied. Originally designed for emergency evacuation, power systems are at 63% capacity. A fold space drive. Zerlix's crystalline form vibrated in shock. That's beyond even theoretical Alliance science. Sarah was already moving. Plot the course, Atlas. Engineering team. Begin power-up sequences. Admiral, we need to evacuate all non-essential personnel to the secondary bunkers. As they worked, more historical footage played across the displays. Humanity fighting wars that had been erased from Alliance records. Ships performing maneuvers that violated the laws of tactical logic. Weapons that worked on principles no one had thought to try. The facility shuddered as the first swarm bombardment hit the outer defense grid. But deep below, something was awakening. The Fold space drive's powerful thrum built to a crescendo that seemed to shake reality itself. "They're breaking through," called one of the sensor operators. "Multiple bioships breaching the upper atmosphere. Fold space initiation in 5. Atlas announced calmly. 4, 3, 2. Sarah caught one last glimpse of the surface monitors. Massive swarm vessels descending through burning skies. Before reality twisted inside out, when her vision cleared, they were somewhere else. Somewhere dark. The Hercules void stretched before them. A vast emptiness between spiral arms where no ships ever ventured. No ships except. "Signal detected," Atlas announced. "Recognition codes confirmed. Beginning revival sequence for Anchorage 7. Through the facility's external cameras, Sarah watched as space itself seemed to ripple. A massive door opened in the void, revealing the sleek, predatory shapes of ships, unlike anything the Alliance had ever fielded. And at their center, a vessel so large it dwarfed even swarm-high ships. "Project Prometheus," Atlas stated. "Humanity's answer to extinction-level threats." And aboard, the AI paused, almost seeming to smile. The commander who developed the tactics that the Sealing Treaty was created to contain. Admiral Helena Martinez was about to wake up. And with her, humanity's true legacy would return to a galaxy that desperately needed what only they could provide. The ability to think the unthinkable, to do the impossible, to fight with the kind of desperate creativity that logical species could never predict. The sleeping giants were about to wake up, and the swarm was about to learn why some weapons were sealed away not to protect the galaxy from them, but to protect them from what the galaxy might need them to become. Children of Earth. The stasis pods hissed open one by one, releasing their centuries-old cargo into a galaxy that had forgotten them. Sarah Chen watched through reinforced observation windows as medical teams, both Alliance and automated human systems, tended to the awakening crew of Project Prometheus. Admiral Helena Martinez was the first to fully regain consciousness. She was shorter than Sarah had expected, with copper-brown skin and gray-streaked black hair. But her eyes held the intensity of someone who had commanded fleets in humanity's darkest hours. "Status report," were her first words, spoken even as she was still being helped out of the stasis pod. Atlas materialized beside her. "Admiral Martinez, 342 years have passed since initiation of the sealing protocol. The contingency you prepared for has arrived." The Admiral's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened on the medical pod's edge. "Show me." The briefing that followed was conducted in Project Prometheus's command center, a vast chamber that hummed with technology the Alliance observers could barely comprehend. Admiral Martinez stood silent as Atlas and Sarah explained the situation. The swarm, the falling Alliance, the desperate search for humanity's hidden strength. "So," Martinez said finally, "the nightmares were right." She turned to Admiral Coven. "Our strategists predicted this. A threat that evolved too perfectly, adapted too efficiently. We knew something like the swarm would eventually emerge. That's why you agreed to the sealing." Kivan's bioluminescence pulsed with surprise. "Your entire species voluntarily imprisoned themselves as a contingency." Martinez's laugh was sharp. "Voluntarily? Hardly. But we convinced them to do it our way." She gestured, and holographic displays sprang to life around them. "Show them, Atlas. Show them what we were really doing during those centuries of imprisonment." The displays filled with images that made the Alliance observers step back in shock. Vast underground cities on Earth, training facilities, manufacturing centers, an entire civilization that hadn't been imprisoned, but had transformed itself into something new. "We knew conventional military forces couldn't stop something like the swarm," Martinez explained. "You can't outthink an enemy that evolves perfect counters to every strategy. Unless," she smiled, "unless you become something that doesn't fight with strategy at all." "I don't understand," Sarah admitted. The swarm's greatest strength is its ability to analyze, adapt, and overcome, Martinez said. It expects enemies to fight logically, to follow established military doctrine. So we spent 3 centuries learning to do the opposite. More pods were opening now, crew members emerging, each moving with the precise coordination of people who had trained together for years before their long sleep. But there was something else about them, something in their eyes that spoke of more than just military discipline. We rebuilt ourselves, Martinez continued, not just our technology, but how we think. Traditional military forces trained to follow orders, to execute plans. We trained to create chaos, to think laterally, to do the thing no sane species would consider. A young officer approached, saluting. "Admiral, the Prometheus is ready for crew transfer. All systems nominal." Martinez nodded. "Show them the ship." The external cameras activated, revealing the true scale of Project Prometheus for the first time. It wasn't just a ship, it was an entire battle station disguised as a ship. Its hull was covered in technology that seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to focus on any one section. "Quantum uncertainty drives," Martinez explained as they walked toward the docking tubes. "The ship exists in multiple probable states simultaneously. The swarm won't be able to predict where we'll be because even we don't know until the moment of action." "That's impossible," Orcs protested. "The energy requirements alone." "Impossible is what we do best," Martinez cut him off. "The swarm fights with perfect logic, evolving to counter whatever its enemy does. But you can't evolve a counter to chaos itself. You can't adapt to an enemy that breaks the rules of engagement every time they fight." They reached Prometheus's bridge, a cathedral of war unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. The crew moved to their stations with practiced ease, each step the result of centuries of preparation. "We're not just soldiers," Martinez said, taking her place in the command chair. "We're humanity's answer to extinction. We're the chaos that logic can't predict, the madness that sanity can't counter. We're everything the galaxy feared we might become." She turned to Admiral Kevin. "Your fleet commanders will hate working with us. We'll ignore their carefully planned strategies. We'll take risks they consider suicidal. We'll do things that violate every principle of military doctrine they've ever learned." "And that will work against the swarm?" Kevin asked. Martinez's smile was fierce. "It's the only thing that can. You can't beat perfect logic with better logic. You beat it by being so illogical, so unpredictable, that its perfect adaptations become meaningless." Alerts flashed across the bridge. The swarm had traced their fold space trajectory, faster than expected. Multiple high ships were emerging from hyperspace. "Perfect timing," Martinez said. "Time to show the galaxy why humanity was really sealed away. Not because we were dangerous." She gave the order to power up Prometheus's impossible weapons, but because sometimes the only way to save civilization is to break all its rules. The battle was about to begin, and the swarm was about to learn that some enemies can't be beaten by evolution, because they evolved specifically to be what even perfect logic couldn't comprehend. The art of chaos. The swarm hive ships moved with perfect precision, their biomechanical forms shifting and adapting as their collective intelligence analyzed the strange vessel before them. Their pattern recognition systems struggled to lock onto Prometheus's quantum uncertain hull, but their confidence remained absolute. They had defeated countless civilizations. They had adapted to every weapon. They had overcome every strategy. They had never faced humanity. "Combat formations," Admiral Kevin asked as the swarm ships approached. Admiral Martinez shook her head, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "No formations, no patterns. Every ship acts independently. Maximum chaos protocol." The orders went out to the awakened human fleet. 30 ships, each equipped with technology that defied conventional physics, each crewed by soldiers trained to think in ways that violated every principle of military logic. "They're launching biotorpedoes," Sarah reported from her observer station. Standard swarm attack pattern. Standard is predictable, Martins replied. And predictable is dead. All ships initiate random walk protocols. Weapons free, maximum variance. What followed defied description. The human ships didn't move like warships. They moved like dancers experiencing simultaneous seizures. Each vessel took a different random path, firing weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Some ships appeared to be in multiple places at once, thanks to their quantum uncertainty drives. Others seemed to phase through swarm attacks like ghosts. Impossible, Zorlix whispered, his crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. Their maneuvers violate every principle of spatial dynamics. That's the point, Sarah realized, watching the swarm's response. The bioships were trying to adapt, growing new defenses and countermeasures. But they were adapting to solve the wrong problem. They were looking for patterns where none existed. Prometheus itself was a symphony of controlled chaos. Its weapons didn't fire in salvos, but in random bursts that somehow, impossibly, formed perfect attack patterns in four-dimensional space. Martinez called out orders that seemed nonsensical until the moment they worked. Echo Team, inverse spiral through quantum state 7. Delta Group, initiate butterfly protocol. Prometheus, prepare for bifurcation assault. The bridge crew responded with the practiced ease of people who had trained to turn insanity into art. The massive ship split into two quantum probability states, existing in two places simultaneously, catching a swarm hive ship between realities and tearing it apart. The swarm's adaptation rate is dropping, Sarah announced, studying the sensor data. Their evolutionary algorithms, they're starting to conflict with each other. Martinez nodded grimly. They're trying to adapt to everything at once. But our attacks aren't following any pattern they can optimize against. Each countermeasure they develop makes them more vulnerable to our next random action. A swarm carrier, twice the size of a normal high ship, moved to coordinate their response. The smaller bioships began to form new patterns, trying to establish a defensive grid. They're attempting to create a prediction matrix, Kivan observed. Standard swarm tactic. Analyze enough data points, and they can predict any enemy's actions. Can't predict chaos, Martins replied. All ships implement Protocol 0. The human fleet's actions became even more erratic. Ships fired their weapons backward, using the recoil for momentum. Others deliberately crashed into each other, their quantum fields merging to create temporary wormholes. One destroyer spun like a top, its weapons firing in a spiral pattern that somehow caught 3 swarm ships in a temporal crossfire. Their adaptation algorithms are reaching critical failure, Sarah reported excitedly. The swarm ships, they're starting to contradict each other's evolutionary paths. On the main display, they could see it happening. Bioships growing armor that made them too heavy to maneuver. Others developing energy shields that interfered with their own weapons. The perfect logic of the hive mind was breaking down as it tried to find patterns in pure chaos. Now, Martinez ordered, all ships converge on the carrier. Random attack vectors, maximum temporal displacement. Fire everything. The human fleet came together like a swarm of angry wasps, each ship approaching from a different dimensional angle. Prometheus led the charge, its quantum state fluctuating so rapidly it appeared to be everywhere at once. The swarm carrier never had a chance. It tried to adapt, its surface sprouting thousands of different defensive measures. But each defense only protected it against one possible attack, leaving it vulnerable to all the others. The human fleet's weapons, each operating on different principles, each fired in random patterns, tore through its defenses like they didn't exist. When the carrier exploded, it took half its escort fleet with it. The remaining swarm ships began to retreat, their perfectly coordinated movements now jerky and uncertain. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they couldn't adapt to, because it wasn't trying to follow rules they could learn. Admiral Kivan's bioluminescence pulsed with astonishment. That was I've never seen anything like it. And neither had they, Martine said quietly. Their perfect logic, their flawless adaptation, it all depends on enemies that think like they do, that try to find optimal solutions. But humanity, she smiled. We spent 3 centuries learning to be what logic can't predict, to fight in ways that make perfection meaningless. Sarah looked at the sensor readings from the retreating swarm ships. They're sending quantum signals across their network. The entire hive mind will know about this battle. Good, Martins replied. Let them analyze it. Let them try to find patterns to adapt to. They won't find any, because we'll never fight the same way twice. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy. We're what happens when evolution optimizes for unpredictability itself. The bridge crew cheered as the last swarm ship vanished into hyperspace, but Martinez's expression remained serious. This was just the beginning. The swarm would return with larger forces, trying to overwhelm chaos with numbers. But now humanity was awake, and 3 centuries of preparation were about to show the galaxy why some weapons were too dangerous to leave active and too necessary to leave sleeping forever. Breaking the hive. The combined fleet of humanity and the Alliance gathered at the edge of the galactic core. 3 months had passed since Prometheus's first victory, months filled with battles that defied conventional physics and tactics. The swarm had committed more and more forces to stopping the human fleet, and each defeat had made their responses more erratic, more desperate. Admiral Martinez stood on Prometheus's bridge, studying the tactical display where thousands of swarm bioships swarmed around their central hive cluster. The massive organic structures pulsed with angry light, visible even from light years away. They've committed 90% of their forces, Sarah reported, her voice tight with anticipation. Just as you predicted. Of course they did, Martins replied. Perfect logic demands overwhelming force against threats it can't predict. They think they can drown chaos in numbers. She turned to Admiral Coven. Are your forces ready? The Alliance commander's bioluminescence flickered with determination patterns. All ships have been modified according to your specifications, though I still don't understand how this plan can work. Understanding would defeat the purpose. Martinez smiled. The beauty of chaos is that it works best when even its creators don't fully comprehend it. The past months had seen the human fleet teaching the Alliance new ways of fighting. Not their technology. There wasn't time for that. But their philosophy. The art of controlled chaos. The power of unpredictability. Each Alliance species had learned to tap into their own unique forms of illogical combat. Signal from Earth, Sarah announced. The quantum beacon is ready. This was the true purpose of Project Prometheus. Not just a ship, but a key to unlock humanity's final gift to the galaxy. The quantum beacon would establish a direct link to Earth's defense grid, releasing 3 centuries of accumulated chaos into the swarm's neural network. All ships, Martinez's voice carried across the combined fleet, initiate Protocol Omega. Maximum temporal variance. Remember, don't think, don't plan, just act. Let instinct guide you. The fleet moved forward, but not as a coordinated force. Each ship followed its own random path, creating a 3-dimensional cloud of unpredictable motion. Alliance vessels, trained in human methods, broke formation in ways that would have horrified their previous commanders. The swarm responded with overwhelming force. Millions of biotorpedoes filled space. Beam weapons capable of cutting through planets lashed out. But they were firing at shadows, at quantum possibilities, at ships that refused to be where logic said they should be. Prometheus, Martins ordered, prepare the beacon. All ships, create maximum tactical confusion. The human fleet's response defied description. Ships fired their weapons backward to gain forward momentum. Others deliberately collided, their quantum fields merging to create temporary weapons. Some vessels appeared to time shift, attacking from multiple temporal coordinates simultaneously. The Alliance fleet added to the chaos. Crystalline ships shattered themselves into clouds of razor shards, each fragment acting independently. Energy beings abandoned their containment vessels to possess swarm bioships. Silicon-based civilizations transmitted mathematical paradoxes that confused the swarm's logical processors. In the center of it all, Prometheus began to change. Its quantum uncertainty drive pushed to maximum. The massive ship existed in hundreds of probable states simultaneously. The quantum beacon at its heart powered up, drawing on the accumulated chaos of 3 centuries of human preparation. Their adaptation algorithms are failing. Sarah's voice rose with excitement. The hive mind, it's trying to process too many impossible variables at once. Martinez nodded grimly. Now we show them why the galaxy feared us enough to seal us away. Atlas, initiate final protocol. Release the signal. Through Prometheus's quantum beacon, a wave of pure information chaos burst forth. 300 years of humanity practicing illogical actions, developing impossible technologies, thinking in ways that violated every principle of ordered thought. All of it crashed into the swarm's neural network at once. The effect was catastrophic. Bioships began to evolve in contradictory ways, their perfectly logical minds unable to process the sheer volume of chaos they were experiencing. Some grew defenses that crippled their ability to move. Others developed weapons that threatened their own structural integrity. The hive mind is fragmenting, Sarah reported, watching in awe as the massive swarm began to break apart. They can't maintain neural cohesion. The chaos, it's making them fight themselves. Martinez's expression was fierce. This is humanity's true weapon, not our technology, not our ships, but our ability to embrace chaos itself. To be what perfect logic can never predict or overcome. The swarm's mighty fleet was tearing itself apart, evolution running wild as it tried to adapt to everything at once. Ships crashed into each other, fired on their own allies, or simply shut down as their biological computers crashed under the weight of too many paradoxes. In the end, it wasn't the combined fleet's weapons that destroyed the swarm. It was their own perfect logic, their own flawless adaptation, turned against them by an enemy that refused to make sense. As the last bioships fell silent, Admiral Kevin turned to Martinez. "Now I understand," he said quietly, "why they sealed you away, why they feared you so much." Martinez nodded. "Because sometimes the galaxy needs guardians who can think the unthinkable, who can do the impossible, who can fight chaos with chaos itself." She smiled. "That's humanity's gift, and our burden. We're what happens when evolution optimizes for unpredictability itself." Sarah watched as Alliance ships began the process of containing the remaining swarm fragments. "What happens now?" she asked. "Will humanity be sealed away again?" "No," Martinez replied. "The galaxy needs us now. Not just our weapons or our ships, but our way of thinking. Our ability to see beyond logic, to find solutions where none should exist." She turned to Kevin. "The Alliance needs to learn what we learned, that sometimes the best defense against perfect enemies is to be perfectly unpredictable yourself." The quantum beacon powered down, its purpose fulfilled. But its effects would ripple through the galaxy for centuries to come. Humanity had returned, bringing with them not just victory, but a new way of thinking about war, about evolution, about existence itself. And in the vast depths of space, other threats waited, perfect, logical, unstoppable threats that would someday emerge to challenge the galaxy again. But they would find a civilization change, one that had learned from humanity the most powerful lesson of all. That chaos, properly embraced, was the ultimate weapon against the tyranny of perfect logic.